The morning sun cast long shadows across downtown Seattle as Emma Rodriguez clutched her leather portfolio against her chest. Her heart pounded with nervous energy as she walked out of another glass tower, the taste of disappointment bitter on her tongue. "That made rejection number 15 this month. We'll keep your resume on file," the HR manager had said with that practiced smile that meant absolutely nothing. Emma had heard those same words so many times they felt like a cruel joke. Her marketing degree from the University of Washington seemed worthless in a job market that demanded 5 years of experience for entry-level positions. Standing on the bustling sidewalk, Emma checked her phone. 3 missed calls from her landlord and a text message that made her stomach drop. "Rent due tomorrow or eviction notice goes out." She had exactly $47 in her checking account, and her credit cards were maxed out from months of unemployment. A father's love and a daughter's Perdemus phone buzzed with another call. This time it was her father, Robert Martinez, calling from his construction site. "Mia, how did the interview go?" His voice carried that hopeful tone she'd grown to hate because she always had to crush it. "Not good, Papa. They went with someone more experienced." Emma tried to keep the defeat out of her voice, but her father knew her too well. "Emma, you know I can help. The construction business is doing well this year, and I can know Papa. We've talked about this. You've already done enough paying. For my college, I need to figure this out myself." Emma loved her father deeply, but she couldn't bear the thought of being a financial burden. Robert had worked double shifts for years to pay for her education, believing his daughter would have opportunities he never had. After hanging up, Emma sat on a nearby bench and pulled out her phone to scroll through job listings. Most required experience she didn't have, or offered wages that wouldn't cover her basic expenses. Her savings had evaporated during 8 months of unemployment, and her pride had prevented her from asking for help. The Billionaires towered, that's when she saw it. Hunt's Technologies, the gleaming 40-story tower that dominated Seattle's skyline. Everyone knew Sebastian Hunt, the tech genius who had built a billion-dollar empire before turning 35. His company created artificial intelligence software that revolutionized how businesses operated worldwide. Emma had never considered applying there. Companies like Hunt Technologies seemed impossibly out of reach for someone like her. But desperation has a way of making the impossible seem worth trying. She stood up, smoothed her navy blue blazer, and walked the 6 blocks to the Hunt building. The lobby was more intimidating than anything she'd ever experienced. Marble floors reflected the light from crystal chandeliers, and the walls displayed awards and achievements that seemed to mock her modest background. The elevator. Encounter. The security guard barely glanced at Emma as she approached the reception desk. The woman behind the counter, perfectly polished in designer clothing, looked up with barely concealed annoyance. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her tone suggesting Emma clearly didn't belong. "No, but I was hoping to speak with someone in human resources about potential opportunities. We don't accept walk-ins. All applications must be submitted online." The receptionist had already turned back to her computer, dismissing Emma entirely. Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she couldn't give up. Not yet. She noticed a group of executives heading toward the elevators and made a split-second decision that would change her life forever. She slipped into the elevator just as the doors were closing. Finding herself pressed against the back wall with 3 men in expensive suits, the elevator began its ascent, and Emma realized she had no plan for what to do when it stopped. That's when she noticed him. Sebastian Hunt. The man behind the billion. Sebastian Hunt stood in the center of the elevator, commanding attention without saying a word. He was taller than Emma had expected from seeing him in magazines, with dark hair and intense green eyes that seemed to analyze everything around him. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. Emma tried to make herself invisible, but in an elevator with 4 people, that was impossible. When Sebastian's eyes met hers in the reflection of the polished doors, she felt something electric pass between them. "Going up?" he asked, his voice carrying a slight smile. Emma realized everyone was looking at her, waiting for an answer. The elevator had stopped at the 20th floor, and the other men were getting out. "Actually, I was just leaving," she mumbled, moving toward the doors. "Wait." Sebastian's voice stopped her. The other executives looked surprised as he turned to face Emma directly. "You're not an employee here. It wasn't a question." Emma felt trapped between honesty and the lie she'd been living by, sneaking into the elevator. "No, sir. I was hoping to speak with someone about job opportunities, but reception told me to apply." Online, her voice was steadier than she felt. Sebastian studied her for a moment that felt like an eternity. "What's your background?" "Marketing degree from UW. 2 years of experience in social media management and campaign development." Emma found herself standing straighter, somehow drawing confidence from his attention. The proposition that changed everything, the elevator, continued upward, just the two of them now. Sebastian pressed the button for the top floor, his private office level. "Emma Rodriguez," she said, extending her hand when she realized she hadn't introduced herself. Sebastian Hunt was firm and warm. "Tell me, Emma Rodriguez, what would you do for $50,000? The question hit Emma like a physical blow. $50,000 would solve every problem in her life. She could pay her rent, help her father, and have enough left over to survive while building her career. "That depends on what you're asking." "Me to do," she managed to say, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. Sebastian smiled, and Emma noticed how it transformed his entire face. "Nothing illegal or immoral, I promise. I need someone to play a role for 6 months, someone smart, attractive, and convincing." The elevator opened onto a luxurious office space, with floor-to ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Seattle. Sebastian gestured for Emma to follow him into his private office. The deal. It seemed too good to be true. Sebastian's office was larger than Emma's entire apartment. A massive desk dominated one end, while comfortable seating areas were arranged near the windows. Everything spoke of wealth and power, making Emma feel even more out of place. "Please sit," Sebastian said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk. "Can I offer you coffee?" "Water." Emma shook her head, too nervous to trust herself with a beverage. Sebastian sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on the desk. "I'm going to be direct with you, Emma. I need a girlfriend." Emma's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me? Not a real girlfriend? Fake one? Someone to accompany me to business events, social functions, and family gatherings for the next 6 months." Sebastian's tone was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing a normal business transaction. "I don't understand." "Someone like you must have women lining up. Someone like me has a problem," Sebastian interrupted. "My mother has decided it's time for me to settle down. It's been arranging blind dates and inviting eligible women to family events. It's interfering with my work and my life." Emma tried to process what she was hearing. "So you want to hire someone to pretend to be your girlfriend to get your mother off your back?" "Exactly. In 6 months, we'll have a mature, mutual breakup. And I'll have proven to my family that I'm capable of a serious relationship, just not ready for marriage yet." The terms of an impossible contract. Sebastian opened a drawer and pulled out a document that looked like it had been prepared by an entire legal team. The compensation would be $50,000, paid in monthly installments. You'd receive a clothing allowance, professional styling, and training on high society etiquette. Emma's hands trembled as she looked at the contract. The money would change her life, but something felt too easy about the arrangement. "What exactly would I have to do?" she asked. "Attend events with me, look happy and in love, convince my family and business associates that we're in a genuine relationship. Nothing physical beyond what might be expected in public. Holding hands, occasional kisses on the cheek for photos." Sebastian stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "Below, you'd have your own apartment. I own a building with furnished units for company executives. Complete privacy and independence outside of our public appearances." Wrestling with temptation, Emma felt like she was drowning in possibilities and concerns. The rational part of her mind screamed that this was insane. She didn't know this man. The whole arrangement felt like something out of a romance novel rather than real life. But the desperate part of her mind, the part that had been rejected 15 times, that faced eviction, that watched her father work himself to exhaustion, whispered that this was the answer to all her problems. "How many events would we be talking about?" she asked, trying to sound practical. 2 or 3 per month? Some business dinners, a few charity galas, family gatherings during holidays? Nothing that would interfere with you pursuing other opportunities. Sebastian returned to his chair, his green eyes studying Emma's face. "You have 24 hours to decide. If you're interested, we'll start with a trial period next weekend at my mother's birthday party." Emma felt the walls of her small life pressing in around her. The logical choice was to say no, to walk away from this bizarre proposition and continue her normal job search. But normal hadn't been working for her. "What happens if people don't believe we're really together?" she asked. "Then we work harder to convince them. But I don't think that will be a problem." Sebastian's smile was confident, almost predatory. "You're exactly the type of woman my family would expect me to fall for. Smart, beautiful, from a working-class background that would prove I haven't forgotten my roots." Emma realized that Sebastian had been analyzing her from the moment she stepped into the elevator, calculating whether she would fit his needs. It should have bothered her more than it did. The moment of truth standing up to leave, Emma felt the weight of the decision ahead of her. $50,000. A furnished apartment. Access to a world she had only imagined. "Mr. Hunt, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How do you know I won't take your money and then expose this whole arrangement to the media?" Sebastian laughed, a genuine sound that filled the large office. "Because, Emma Rodriguez, you have too much integrity. It's written all over your face. Besides, the contract includes a substantial penalty clause for breach of confidentiality." Emma rode the elevator down from the top floor. Her mind raced with possibilities and fears. She had 24 hours to decide whether to step into a world of wealth and deception, or continue struggling in her authentic but difficult life. The security guard who had ignored her earlier now watched with curiosity as she walked through the lobby with Sebastian Hunt's business card in her hand and his phone number programmed into her phone outside. Seattle's afternoon rain had started to fall, and Emma realized that no matter what she decided, her life would never be quite the same again. The elevator encounter had opened a door she had never known existed. Now she had to decide whether she was brave enough to walk through it. That night, Emma lay awake in her tiny apartment, staring at the contract Sebastian had given her to review. The numbers seemed impossible, the opportunity too good to be true. But desperation and hope wrestled in her heart, and she knew that by morning, she would have to choose between the life she had always known and the chance to step into something completely unknown. The rain continued to fall against her window, and Emma closed her eyes, imagining what it would feel like to never worry about money again. The fantasy was seductive and terrifying in equal measure, and she fell asleep clutching Sebastian Hunt's business card like a lifeline she wasn't sure she deserved to grab. Emma stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6 a.m. Sebastian's contract spread across her small vanity. She had read every clause 3 times during a sleepless night. But the decision ultimately came down to one simple fact. She had no other choice. Her phone buzzed with a text from her landlord. "Final notice, pay by noon or start packing." Took a deep breath and dialed Sebastian's number. "I accept your offer," she said when he answered on the second ring. "Excellent. Olivia will pick you up at 10 for shopping and preparation. We have a family dinner tonight." Sebastian's voice was all business, but Emma detected something else underneath. Satisfaction. Within 3 hours of her decision, Emma found herself in the back seat of a luxury sedan with Olivia Chen, Sebastian's impeccably dressed assistant. Olivia was in her early 30s, with sharp features and an efficiency that bordered on intimidating. "First rule," Olivia said as they pulled up to an exclusive boutique on 5th Avenue. "Never look impressed by money. Sebastian's family will be watching for gold digger behavior." Emma nodded. But privately, she wondered how anyone could not be impressed by the world she was entering. Transformation into another world. The boutique experience was unlike anything Emma had ever imagined. Personal shoppers brought out fit after outfit while Emma stood in front of 3-way mirrors, watching herself transform into someone she barely recognized. This one, Olivia decided, selecting a midnight blue dress that hugged Emma's curves while maintaining elegance. Conservative enough for family dinner, expensive enough to show Sebastian has good taste. Next came shoes, jewelry, and a handbag that cost more than Emma's monthly rent. Each item was charged to Sebastian's account without a second thought, making Emma realize just how different their worlds truly were. "Now for the real work," Olivia announced, leading Emma to an upscale salon. For the next 4 hours, Emma was plucked, styled, and polished by a team of professionals who treated her transformation like an art project. When they finished, Emma stared at a version of herself that belonged in magazines. Remember Olivia coached as they headed to Emma's new apartment? "You've been dating Sebastian for 3 months. You met at a charity auction for children's literacy. You work in marketing. For a nonprofit organization, keep your answers simple and consistent. The apartment that felt like a dreamer's new temporary home was on the 20th floor of Sebastian's building. With floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, the furnished space was larger and more luxurious than anywhere she had ever lived. Sebastian will pick you up at 7, Olivia informed her. His mother, Catherine, is traditional, but sharp. His father died 5 years ago, so Catherine runs the family dynamics. She's the person you most need to impress. Alone in her new apartment, Emma called her father to let him know she had found a job and moved to a safer neighborhood. She hated lying to him, but the truth was too complicated to explain. "I'm proud of you, Mia," Robert said, his voice filled with relief. "I knew something good would happen." Emma hung up feeling like a fraud, but when she looked at her reflection in the apartment's mirrors, she barely recognized the polished woman staring back at her. Meeting the Hunt family, Sebastian arrived precisely at 7, looking devastatingly handsome in a tailored black suit. When Emma opened the door, his expression shifted in a way that made her pulse quicken. "You look incredible," he said. And something in his voice suggested he wasn't just playing a role. During the drive to his mother's Bellevue estate, Sebastian briefed Emma on family dynamics. "My mother built Hunt Industries alongside my father. She's brilliant but controlling. My younger sister Jennifer lives in New York and only visits for major occasions. My brother Michael runs our West Coast operations." The Hunt family estate was breathtaking. A modern mansion surrounded by manicured gardens and overlooking Lake Washington. Emma felt her confidence waver as they approached the front door. "Just follow my lead," Sebastian whispered, taking her hand. The touch sent an unexpected spark through Emma's body. Catherine Hunt. The ultimate test. Catherine Hunt was elegant and formidable, with silver hair styled perfectly and eyes that seemed to see everything. She greeted Emma with polite warmth, but Emma could feel herself being evaluated with every word. "Sebastian tells me you work with literacy programs," Catherine said as they settled in the drawing room for cocktails. "Such important work, though I imagine not very lucrative." "The reward comes from making a difference," Emma replied, staying close to the script Olivia had provided. "Money isn't everything." Catherine's smile sharpened, spoken like someone who's never had to worry about it. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks, but Sebastian smoothly intervened. "Emma grew up understanding the value of hard work, Mother. It's one of the things I admire most about her." At dinner, Emma found herself relaxing despite the formal setting. Sebastian's brother Michael was charming and funny, and even Catherine began to warm up as the evening progressed. Dangerous chemistry. What surprised Emma most was how natural it felt to be with Sebastian. When he put his arm around her waist or smiled at something she said, it didn't feel like acting. Their conversations flowed easily, and she found herself genuinely enjoying his company. "You two seem very comfortable together," Catherine observed over dessert. "Sebastian has never brought anyone home who seems so compatible." After dinner, Sebastian walked Emma through the estate's gardens. The night air was cool, and when Emma shivered, Sebastian offered her his jacket without thinking. He did perfectly. "Tonight," he said, his voice softer than she'd heard it before, "your family is lovely. Your mother is intimidating, but I can see where you get your intelligence." Emma realized she meant every word. They stood by the lake, moonlight reflecting off the water, and for a moment the pretense fell away. Sebastian stepped closer, and Emma's breath caught. "Emma," he began, his voice uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. "We should probably head back," Emma said quickly, stepping away from whatever was building between them. This was supposed to be business, and she couldn't afford to forget that. The first public event, 2 weeks later, Emma found herself at Seattle's most exclusive charity gala. Her arm linked through Sebastian's as photographers captured their entrance. The ballroom was filled with the city's elite, and Emma recognized faces from magazine covers and news broadcasts. "Just smile and let me do most of the talking," Sebastian murmured as they approached a group of his business associates. But Emma discovered she didn't need to hide in Sebastian's shadow. Her genuine interest in the charity's mission and her natural warmth made her popular with the other guests. She found herself in animated conversations about education reform and youth programs, topics she genuinely cared about. "Your girlfriend is delightful," she overheard one of Sebastian's business partners tell him. Refreshingly authentic in this crowd. Sebastian's response made Emma's heart skip. She's pretty amazing, isn't she? Growing complications as the weeks passed, Emma fell into a routine that felt dangerously comfortable. She attended events with Sebastian twice a week, spending her other time volunteering at a real literacy program and working on her genuine job search. But the lines between performance and reality began to blur. Sebastian would call her just to talk about his day. He remembered details about her life and asked about her father's construction business. When she mentioned wanting to visit an art exhibit, tickets appeared at her apartment the next day. You don't have to do things like that, Emma told him after he surprised her with tickets to a sold-out concert by her favorite band. I know. Sebastian replied, his green eyes holding hers. I wanted to. The physical aspect of their arrangement was becoming increasingly difficult too. What had started as occasional hand-holding and cheek kisses for photos had evolved into longer touches and moments when they forgot they had an audience. The threat of exposure, everything changed at a business dinner with Sebastian's biggest competitor, James Morrison, and his wife. Morrison had been trying to poach Hunt Technology's biggest clients, and the dinner was supposed to be a diplomatic peace offering. So Emma, Morrison said with a predatory smile, Sebastian tells us you work in marketing for nonprofits. Which organization exactly? Emma felt panic rise in her throat. She and Sebastian had never discussed specific details that could be verified. I work with several organizations, she replied carefully. My focus is on literacy programs for underprivileged children. How admirable. I'm on the board of Seattle Children's Foundation. I'm surprised we haven't met at any events. Morrison's wife leaned forward with interest. Which programs specifically? Emma felt Sebastian tense beside her, and she realized they were walking into a trap. Morrison suspected something about their relationship and was probing for inconsistencies. Actually, Sebastian interjected smoothly, Emma's been transitioning between organizations. She's considering an offer from my foundation to head our new community outreach program. Emma looked at Sebastian in surprise, but he squeezed her, hand under the table, warning her to play along. The real Sebastian Hunt later that night. In the safety of Emma's apartment, Sebastian paced the living room like a caged animal. Morrison suspects something, he said. He's been trying to find dirt on me for months. If he can prove our relationship is fake, it would embarrass my family and potentially affect our business relationships. Emma realized she was seeing Sebastian. Vulnerable for the first time, confident billionaire facade had cracked, revealing someone who actually cared what people thought. Maybe we should end this arrangement, Emma suggested, though the words felt like glass in her throat. I don't want to cause problems for you. Sebastian stopped pacing and turned to face her. No, we're too invested now. Besides, he paused, running his hands through his dark hair. Out. I don't want it to end. The admission hung in the air between them, changing everything. Emma felt her carefully constructed emotional walls beginning to crumble. Crossing the line the following weekend, Sebastian invited Emma to his private cabin in the San Juan Islands for what he called relationship practice, before an important family wedding. The cabin was rustic luxury, exposed beams, a stone fireplace, and windows overlooking pristine water. Being alone together in such an intimate setting felt like playing with fire. They spent the day walking beaches and talking about everything except their arrangement. Emma learned that Sebastian had started his first business in his college dorm. Ruman had been working 18-hour days since he was 20. He discovered that Emma had dreamed of being a teacher before practical concerns pushed her toward marketing. As evening fell, they sat by the fireplace sharing wine and stories from their childhoods. The conversation grew more personal, more real than anything they had shared before. Can I ask you something? Emma said, emboldened by wine and the intimate setting. Anything? Do you ever get lonely? With all your success and money, are you actually happy? Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. I thought I was, until I met you. Emma's heart stopped. Sebastian, I know this complicates everything, but I can't pretend anymore that this is just business for me. He turned to face her, his green eyes intense in the firelight. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being fake. Emma felt herself leaning toward him, drawn by something stronger than logic or self-preservation. When Sebastian cupped her face in his hands, she didn't pull away. Their first real kiss was electric. filled with weeks of suppressed attraction and growing emotional intimacy. Emma felt herself falling into something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. But as Sebastian's arms wrapped around her, Emma's practical mind screamed warnings. She was falling in love with a man who had hired her to pretend to love him. When their arrangement ended, where would that leave her heart? The point of no return, they spent the night talking by the dying fire, sharing kisses and confessions that felt more real than anything Emma had experienced before. By morning, the professional boundary between them had completely dissolved. Driving back to Seattle, Emma realized she faced an impossible situation. She was genuinely falling in love with Sebastian, but their relationship was built on a contract and deception. Even if his feelings were real, how could they build something authentic on such a fraudulent foundation? "What happens now?" Emma asked as they approached the city. Sebastian reached over and took her hand. "I don't know, but I want to find out." Squeezed his fingers, knowing she had crossed a line from which there would be no safe return. The fake relationship had become dangerously real, and she had no idea how to navigate the emotional minefield ahead as Seattle's skyline came into view. Emma realized that the next phase of their arrangement would test not just their acting abilities, but their hearts. The game had changed, and the stakes were no longer just financial. They were playing with the possibility of real love, real heartbreak, and real consequences that no contract could predict or protect them from. The woman who had desperately needed a job 6 weeks ago had become someone willing to risk everything for the chance at authentic connection. With the man who had hired her to fake it, Emma woke up in her luxurious apartment with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, but her heart felt heavy with confusion. Last night at the cabin had shattered every boundary she had carefully maintained for 2 months. Sebastian's kisses, his confession. The way he had looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. It all felt real, but was it? Her phone buzzed with a text from Sebastian. "Good morning, beautiful. Coffee at our usual place. Before tonight's event?" Emma stared at the message, analyzing every word. Their usual place was a small cafe near Pike Place Market, where they had started meeting to rehearse their public personas. Now, even their private moments felt scripted. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on "See you at 10. The dangerous game continues. The cafe was crowded with morning commuters, providing the perfect cover for Emma's emotional turmoil. Sebastian arrived looking as devastatingly handsome as always, but Emma noticed new lines around his eyes that suggested he had slept as poorly as she had. About last night, he began sliding into the seat across from her. "We don't have to talk about it," Emma interrupted, stirring her coffee unnecessarily. "We have the Fletcher Industries dinner tonight. We should focus on that." Sebastian reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Emma, what happened between us wasn't part of the arrangement. It was real." Emma pulled her hand away, her heart racing. "How can anything between us be real when our entire relationship is built on a lie?" "Because feelings don't follow contracts," Sebastian replied, his green eyes intense. "I can't control how I feel about you any more than you can control how you feel about me." Emma felt tears threaten and looked away. The truth was that she had fallen completely in love with Sebastian Hunt. But she couldn't separate the man from the fantasy life he had purchased for her. That afternoon, Olivia arrived at Emma's apartment with a selection of evening gowns and an unusually serious expression. "Is everything all right?" Emma asked as Olivia began laying out options on the bed. "James Morrison has been asking questions." "About you," Olivia said bluntly. "He hired a private investigator to look into your background." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "What did they find?" "Nothing that contradicts your cover story, but Morrison is suspicious about the timeline of your relationship with Sebastian. Tonight's dinner is crucial. If Morrison can prove your relationship is fabricated, it won't just embarrass Sebastian, it could affect major business deals." Emma realized that her personal feelings for Sebastian had become secondary to protecting his reputation and livelihood. The weight of responsibility felt crushing. "What do I need to do?" Emma asked. "Be perfect. Be so convincing that even Morrison's detective can't find flaws in your performance." Olivia selected a stunning red dress that Emma had never worn. "And Emma? Whatever personal feelings have developed between you and Sebastian tonight, you need to set them aside and remember that you're protecting his future." The Fletcher Industries dinner. Fletcher Industries was Sebastian's biggest client, worth over $500 million annually. The dinner was being held at the Four Seasons, and Emma arrived on Sebastian's arm wearing the red dress and a smile that felt painted on. The guest list read like a who's who of Seattle business elite. Emma recognized faces from magazine covers, society pages, and news broadcasts. She felt like an imposter despite months of preparation. "You look stunning," Sebastian murmured as photographers captured their entrance. "Just remember, we're celebrating our 6-month anniversary next week." Emma nodded, adding that detail to her mental file of relationship facts. 6 months. In reality, they had known each other for less than 3. James Morrison's Trap Morrison approached them during cocktail hour with his wife Rebecca and another couple Emma didn't recognize. "Sebastian, Emma, I'd like you to meet Dr. Patricia Nguyen and her husband David. Patricia runs the Seattle Children's Literacy Foundation." Emma felt her stomach drop. This was a setup. Morrison had specifically invited someone who would be able to verify Emma's supposed nonprofit work. "Emma works in literacy programs too," Morrison continued with a predatory smile. "I thought you two would have a lot in common." Dr. Nguyen's face lit up with interest. "How wonderful. Which organization are you with?" "The literacy community in Seattle is quite close-knit." Emma felt Sebastian tense beside her, but she forced herself to remain calm.
"I work primarily with smaller community programs."
"My focus is on one-on-one tutoring rather than large organizational initiatives." "That's so important," Dr. Nguyen agreed. "Where do you typically find your students?"
Emma drew on her recent volunteer experience at a real literacy program.
"Work with referrals from elementary schools in South Seattle. Many of the children come from families where English isn't the primary language at home." Double quotes. Dr. Nguyen nodded approvingly. "That's exactly where the need is greatest." "Have you worked with the Rodriguez Community Center? They do excellent work in that area." Emma's heart nearly stopped. The Rodriguez Community Center was where she had been volunteering, using her real name. If Dr. Nguyen made the connection. "Familiar with their work," Emma replied carefully. "They do make a tremendous difference." Morrison watched the exchange like a hawk, clearly hoping to catch Emma in an inconsistency. A moment of truth during dinner. Emma found herself seated between Morrison's wife Rebecca and a tech executive who seemed more interested in his phone than conversation. Sebastian was across the table, close enough to catch her eye, but too far away to rescue her if the conversation went badly. "You and Sebastian make such a lovely couple," Rebecca said, cutting into her salmon. "How did you to meet again?" Emma launched into their rehearsed story about meeting at a charity auction. But Rebecca's follow-up questions grew increasingly specific. "Which charity was it exactly?" "I attend most of the major auctions in the city. The Children's Hospital Foundation," Emma replied, sticking to their script. "Oh, I was at that event. When was this? Spring or fall?" Emma realized she was being tested and had no idea what the correct answer should be. She glanced at Sebastian, who was deep in conversation with another guest and hadn't heard the question. "It was spring," Emma said, hoping she sounded confident. "Interesting. The Children's Hospital auction was canceled last spring due to the pandemic restrictions. Are you sure you're thinking of the right event?" Emma felt the room spinning around her. She had been caught in a lie, and Morrison's wife was clearly going to report back to her husband. "You're absolutely right," Emma said, forcing a laugh. "I'm thinking of a different event. Sebastian and I attended so many fundraisers when we first started dating that they all blur together." Rebecca's smile was sharp. "Of course they do." Sebastian's confession after dinner. Sebastian and Emma escaped to the hotel's rooftop bar for what they told other guests was a romantic moment alone. In reality, Emma was fighting panic about being exposed. "Rebecca Morrison knows I lied about how we met," Emma said, gripping her wine glass with white knuckles. "I heard," Sebastian replied grimly. "Morrison set that trap perfectly." Emma looked out over Seattle's glittering skyline, feeling like she was about to lose everything. Maybe it's time to end this arrangement before it gets worse. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you." Sebastian turned to face her fully. "The original reason I hired you. It wasn't just about my mother's matchmaking." Emma's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" Sebastian ran his hands through his dark hair, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. "There's a morality clause in my biggest contracts. My clients are old-fashioned family companies that prefer to work with stable, married business leaders. Being single was actually affecting my bottom line. Emma felt like she had been slapped. So this was never about your family. It was about money. It started that way, Sebastian admitted. But Emma, what I feel for you now is completely real. These past few months have been the happiest of my life. Because I played the role you hired me to play perfectly, Emma said, her voice breaking. How can I believe anything you say when our entire relationship is built on business calculations? The choice between love and self-respect? Emma stood up, her red dress billowing in the rooftop breeze. I can't do this anymore, Sebastian. I thought I was falling in love with you, but I realized I was falling in love with a fantasy version of us that doesn't exist. Emma, please. Let me explain what's to explain. You hired an actress to play your girlfriend for business reasons? The fact that you've developed feelings for your employee doesn't change the fundamental deception of our relationship. Sebastian stood too, moving closer to her. You're right. I hired you for business reasons initially. But somewhere along the way, you became the most important thing in my life. More important than any contract or deal. Emma felt tears streaming down her cheeks. How can I trust that? How can I trust anything you say when you've been calculating and manipulating this situation from the beginning? Because I'm willing to give it all up, Sebastian said desperately. The contracts, the business relationships, all of it.
Emma.
I'll call Morrison right now and tell him the truth. I'll sacrifice every deal that requires me to appear married if it means having a real chance with you. Emma stared at Sebastian, searching his face for any sign of deception. You would really do that? Risk your business empire for me? In a heartbeat. Sebastian pulled out his phone. I'll call Morrison right now. Emma put her hand over his phone, stopping him. Don't. Emma, don't call him because it's too late anyway. Rebecca Morrison already suspects the truth, and Morrison will use that information however it benefits him most. Emma took a deep breath. But also don't call him because I need to know that you're choosing me for the right reasons, not out of guilt or panic. Sebastian put his phone away and took Emma's hands in both of his. I'm choosing you because I love you. It's not the version of you that I hired, not the polished woman who looks perfect at business dinners. I love Emma Rodriguez, the woman who cares more about her father's happiness than her own comfort. The woman who volunteers at literacy programs in her spare time because she genuinely wants to help. The woman who makes me want to be better than just a successful businessman. The truth about love, Emma felt her carefully constructed walls finally crumbling. I love you too, she whispered. But Sebastian, I don't know how to separate what's real from what was performance. For 3 months I've been playing a role. I don't even know who I am when I'm not pretending to be your perfect girlfriend. Sebastian cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. Then let's find out together. No more contracts, no more arrangements. Just Emma and Sebastian figuring out what's real between us. Emma leaned into his touch, feeling something shift in her chest. What about your business? The contracts with morality clauses. I'll figure something else out. Maybe it's time I started doing business with people who care more about my work than my personal life. Sebastian smiled, and Emma saw something in his expression she had never noticed before. Genuine peace. New beginning 6 months later. Emma stood in the same elevator where she had first met Sebastian, but everything had changed. She was no longer the desperate job seeker in a borrowed confidence. She had found work at a marketing firm that specialized in nonprofit organizations. Using the connections and experience from her time with Sebastian to build a genuine career, Sebastian had indeed lost 2 major contracts when Morrison spread rumors about their fake relationship, but he had also gained something more valuable, a real partnership with Emma, both personally and professionally. Emma's marketing expertise had helped Hunt Technologies pivot toward more socially conscious projects, attracting new clients who valued both profit and purpose. The elevator stopped at the 20th floor, Emma's floor. She and Sebastian had moved in together in her original company apartment, preferring its cozy intimacy to his palatial penthouse. See you tonight, Sebastian said, kissing her goodbye as she stepped off the elevator. It's just dinner with my father, Emma replied. Grinning, you don't have to be nervous. I'm not nervous about meeting your father. I'm nervous about asking him for permission to marry his daughter. Emma's heart stopped. Sebastian Hunt, are you the elevator doors closed before he could answer? But Emma saw his smile through the glass and knew that this time there would be no contracts, no arrangements, no carefully calculated business decisions. Just two people who had found real love in the most unexpected place. The perfect ending that evening, Sebastian sat across from Robert Martinez in the small restaurant where Emma had taken her father for his birthday every year since she was 16. Robert was exactly what Sebastian had expected: hardworking, protective of his daughter, and suspicious of wealthy men with unclear intentions. Mr. Martinez, Sebastian began, his usual confidence replaced by genuine nervousness. I want to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. Robert set down his beer and studied Sebastian with the same careful attention Emma used when she was thinking. My daughter tells me you two met when she was looking for work. Yes, sir. I offered her a job, and she changed my life instead. Emma's always been good at that, Robert said with a slight smile. Making things better just by being herself. Sebastian nodded. I know I come from a different world than Emma, and I know you have reasons to be suspicious of my intentions. But I love your daughter more than I've ever loved anything in my life. I want to spend the rest of my life making sure she's happy and safe. Robert was quiet for a long moment, then extended his hand across the table. Take care of her, son. She's the best thing I ever did with my life. When Emma arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes later, she found her father and Sebastian laughing together over stories of her childhood determination to help everyone around her, whether they wanted help or not. What are you two talking about? Emma asked, sliding into the booth next to Sebastian. Just getting to know each other, Sebastian replied, slipping his arm around Emma's shoulders. But when Sebastian dropped to one knee right there in the tiny restaurant where Emma's father had celebrated every milestone of her life, Emma realized that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin in the most ordinary moments. Emma Rodriguez, Sebastian said, holding up a ring that caught the light from the restaurant's humble fixtures. Will you marry me? Not for business, not for appearances, not for anyone else's expectations. Just because I can't imagine a life without you in it. Emma looked around the restaurant at her father's tears of joy, at the other diners who had stopped eating to watch, at Sebastian kneeling on the worn carpet of her childhood memories, and realized that this was exactly how a real love story should end. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, of course, yes. Yes. As Sebastian slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her in front of everyone, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had walked into his elevator, looking for a job, and found her soulmate instead. Sometimes the best things in life come disguised as business propositions, elevator encounters, and arrangements that seem too good to be true. Sometimes love finds you when you're desperate enough to take impossible chances on improbable men, with emerald eyes and hearts bigger than their bank accounts. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who hires you to fake being in love with them turns out to be the person you were meant to love for real all along. The end.